Hey everyone, I am going to start this up here by just going ahead and giving you a few updates on things. I'm going to see if I can make sure I have the chat. This is the first one of these that I've done. So if you wouldn't mind just offering me some comments in the chat area. I have a bunch of videos and information linked up at the bottom for you. So I'm not going to try to do a full-blown performance of this because I have some of those already in the links below, but I'll be happy to play any sections you want. I thought I would start by talking about a few fundamental things, but let me just start by playing, and then we can kind of morph into the fundamental things after, because I'm guessing that many of you have to go eat dinner or something. So let's go ahead and get this started. So let's start with number 6, the fast one. So this is the number 6 from the Fairling studies. And so or I'm they're actually originally from the Fairling, from the Rose studies, from the Mel Warner, Carl Fisher edition. And so this is going to be number 6, and it is the Allegro Risoluto, measures 1 through 31 with no repeat, and the quarter note is at 96. So let's go ahead and just see if we have any comments in here. Okay, let's go ahead and start it up here. So if we go for our metronome at 96, here is 96. And let me get me on a quarter note. That is a pretty fast tempo. So what I'm going to suggest on that is that when you start to practice this, let's start it down at a lower tempo. And I like to start it, believe it or not, at probably around the half tempo mark. So say a round number, here's 50. And if I put it on eighth notes at 50 like this, and by doing it like that, I'm getting a chance to really get my articulations exactly correct, and which is really quite important, and my how I do all my staccatos, etc. So let's go ahead. I'll play it a little bit at that tempo and talk through some things. So one of the things I'd like to emphasize is, as we practice it slowly, I'd like to put in some micro dynamics in there. So it's marked as really no dynamics are marked at all. And what we want to do is have some dynamics in here so that we're giving some shape and direction to the phrases. Let's go ahead and also consider that we have our first 3 notes tied. And I like to clip off that third note a little bit so that the fourth note sounds short. So if my third note is long, but if I make the third note a little shorter, and then if we can make a, I won't say it's a rule, but a sort of like common practice in this one is that because of the way it's structured, the phrases are structured, probably it's not the worst idea to have a little crescendo at the end of bars. And I won't say at the end of every bar, but let's just kind of take a look as we play through it slowly, and then I'll increase the tempo. You can see how the shape of the dynamics will give a little better effect to make it move forward. By the way, I'm using a right-handed B when I play my first phrase. So we have the right-handed B here, and we have the left-handed B here. And so, and when I play my open G, I'm getting my right hand down a little bit early. And when I play the G, the whole right hand goes down. That way, when I go to play my B, all I have to do is press my left hand. And that's a good practice to get into. You would have to plan ahead according to what the music is telling you. But this is a good habit. Whenever I can get my right hand down early, I try to do that. So probably that G and that B into the second bar are the ones I'm going to kind of crescendo in on. So if I crescendo towards, so now if I go ahead and play it a little bit faster, and here I'm doing these little micro dynamics on these. And So I'm emphasizing that second and all of the tongued notes basically in the second bar. So the F sharp, the C sharp, the G, and then I'm going to again put a little bit of a crescendo towards that third bar. So a little bit faster tempo with the phrasing ideas in mind. And again, crescendoing into new sections. One of the things that some of you may have been involved with is music theory in your schools, and maybe some of you have not been involved with it. So what happens in this piece is that he's changing harmonies, and when he goes to a new harmony or a new chord, sometimes that's good for us to push towards that with a crescendo or a decrescendo. So in this case, at the end of the first line, he's going to a 5/7 chord for a moment there. That's all the D7 there. D7 is the 5 of G. Okay, let me go ahead and play a little bit now through, say, about the third line through bar 10. And let me just check my notes here again on this. So yeah, let's go ahead and play through bar 10 to get you some discussion about staccato a little bit. On the bar 6, when I play my C, right-handed C is the one I'm using, instead of playing this F sharp here and flipping back to an E sharp, or which is the equivalent of F natural, I'm using a side. So I'm going from C, and that C, if you practice that isolated a little bit, you should be able to get comfortable with that fingering. As far as practicing goes, and we'll get to this in the second half of this piece here, which I'll do right now, actually. I'll play through it and then we'll start on the second half. The goal with practicing technical passages is to isolate them and put them into as small a unit as possible. Find where the actual problem is and deal with that specific problem. 2, 3, 4 notes, maybe 6 or 8 notes at the most. And you use your metronome and slowly work these things through. A lot of this has to do with fingering. So sometimes you'll have a fingering issue on the clarinet of pinkies. In this piece, though, when we get to the second half, you'll see a little bit more what I'm meaning about the hand position. But overall, as a good rule of thumb, practice slowly and also practice in small units. So again, if I were to practice bar 6, what I probably would do would be keeping my hands close to the instrument. Generally speaking, my hands are, if I drop my left hand and my right hand as well, and I find the instrument, I kind of come with a sort of slight diagonal. Same thing here, relax the arm, bring it up. If I come too straight on like this, it's a little harder for me to negotiate these keys and up here. But I'll say something about that in the second half. So let me get to the second half about hand position. By the way, bar 9 is another spot. As soon as I hit my F sharp, and then I put my right hand B like this, because now I have an arpeggio. So any opportunity I have to get my right hand down, I'm going to try to do that. Bar 9. And one other thing I didn't mention here yet is that when we decide our tempo, that is basically what is going to help us determine our breathing points. So if I play, say, from bar 9, I'll start in bar 9. Let me pick a breathing point, and I'll show you a couple of options for how to breathe if you can't play it all in one breath from the beginning all the way to bar 16, 17, 18. If you can't play from the beginning to 18 because you can't quite get it fast enough, That's okay. Let's find a way to breathe. And the two ways are, the first way is more preferable, to just get a quick breath. I call it a Halloween breath, like that. Just get a very quick, short gasp of air, as if you're scared on Halloween, which was a couple days ago. The second way would be to leave a note out, the fourth of a 16th note, which is not as preferable. So as an example, playing from bar 9. So that's where I'm getting that very quick breath. If I were to leave a note out, though, say, for instance, if I'm playing it just fast enough where it's a little bit faster and I don't have quite enough time to breathe, I might want to leave the fourth note of a group out. And again, this is not as preferable. So I would much rather having us practice the first way, where you just get a quick breath in. But as an example, now I left a couple of notes out there in a row. We wouldn't leave that many out, but that would be one other sort of last ditch effort or option, I should say. So let me try to do the first way again, where I just get the quick breath from bar 9. Now, I didn't need all those breaths, but I took them just as the example. Okay, let's go forward. So the second half is the big hand position part. So what we're doing on the second half is, I'm finding, even though my hand position is kind of like at a diagonal like this, I'm finding that if I push my hand down a little bit, it enables my thumb to grab the thumb hole a little easier, because I have some large leaps, particularly in maybe bars 22 and 23, and also in bars 25. So let's practice that slowly. We'll kind of talk through hand position a little bit, and I'm going to see if we have any comments in here. So let's see here. Okay, let's go ahead and get here, and I'm just going to make sure my comments are turned on, because I had to redo my my stream. So let's see here. Comments, make sure we're all good for this. I think we are. Okay, so let's go ahead and get going with some of the second half. So, by the way, I use a neck strap, a BG neck strap. I use this to help my hand, because otherwise my wrist and hand do hurt sometimes. And so I highly recommend any equipment that helps us to play this instrument very physically easier. So a neck strap for me is a crucial thing. And again, I'm using my right-handed B. So one of the reasons a hand position in this curved here, kind of like diagonal way, is good, is that this A here to this F sharp is, we can just kind of almost be touching the key from our D major. And another sort of little, I don't call it a fun game, but a rule I kind of try to abide by. A teacher taught me this once. I put my pinkies on the low E key and the low C key. And sometimes for my students, what I would do is even take a piece of tape, Scotch tape, and roll it backwards and tape their fingers to the keys. Once those two pinkies are sort of resting and just touching the keys, we're not pressing them, but just touching them, then the other fingers sort of want to follow suit, and they don't go crazy all over the instrument. So when I do my D major, instead of having my pinkies out here, I want to keep them close to the instrument, touching. And just minimize the movement there. Let's make that third note, da, e, up, short again, because when we get faster, the fourth note will sound shorter. So here's a little bit slower, and I'll kind of gradually get higher in tempo. Let's see here. So what I'm going for overall, we can talk technical a lot, absolutely. But what we're trying to go for here is musicality and phrasing. So I'm trying to hear how the overall line is changing. And in this case, we have it's a sort of simplistic etude in a way. The downbeats of each beat 1 and 2 are the ones that are changing. So we can kind of consider those the melody notes. Those are the first and second beats of every measure for a while. So if I keep that in my ear, so if we talk musical in one category and we talk technical in another category, let's talk musical and say that we're going to think of those boom, bee, boom, bee. Let's see, boom, boom, boom. So I was singing the fifth instead of the sixth. La, da, dee, da, don. So let me hear that melody. But now on the technical side of things, let me remember that I have my right hand B that I'm going to use. Let me also remember that I'm going to keep my pinkies close to the instrument. So let's do those first 2 bars a little bit. Now we go to the next bar. And so ultimately, what I'm trying to do is pay close attention to my fingers, pay close attention to the way that the underlying pulse works. It's all in 16th notes. So if I were to be thinking bum, 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 dum. I want to be feeling that underlying steady pulse. Oh, by the way, let's talk about something else. Use a metronome. And then when you use the metronome for a while, turn it off and try not to use it and listen for the pulse in your mind. Do tap your foot a little bit. So it's great to use the metronome. I use it a lot, but then it's also good to train ourselves to not use it. So let's do a quick example. If I put my tempo at, say, 80 on the 8th notes, can I be steady now? And the way I want to know if I'm, or maybe I sort of test myself if I'm steady, is I put my foot down and I put my foot up, and those taps should be equal. So it should be and I down up are my 8th notes. Down up with my foot. Let's talk a little bit about bar 25. It's a C sharp to an A sharp. And I see my wonderful friend Jan Merida from Czech Republic is here watching. Fantastic, Jan. Come stai is my friend who helps me with all my Italian studies. Fantastic. Fantastico. So let's go into bar 25. And so what we're going to do is go from C sharp up to our A sharp. And then we're going to go down. It's basically a F sharp major arpeggio, second inversion. So we have a lot of things going on with this. I'm going to kind of come up closer to the camera to show you this. So C sharp is like this. A sharp is a B flat, okay? When we come down to our F sharp, and then we come down to our C sharp, first of all, the A sharp to F sharp is something that has to be practiced because we might get a little bit of an extra note in there. Again, keeping my pinky over here locked in there. So now if I were to make a little bit of an error in my left hand, 2 fingers, thumb and first finger, I might put an A in there by mistake or some other note. But once I get to the F sharp, now I go to my C sharp, and this is being a little clarinerdy here. So once I get to my C sharp, you notice that you're pressing a ring here, a hole, an open hole with no key on it, and this C sharp key, which is a lever that presses in a different way. All of that and then on top of that with my thumb on the ring. And if we're going at a fast tempo, that is a lot of coordination with my left hand. So you remember how we said earlier, take things very slowly and one at a time, work phrases maybe in 4-note groups, maybe not even more than that. And in this case, I would say just those 4 notes. Let's practice it a little bit. So I'll put it at 60. So to show you how I'm practicing a little bit, I have it very, very slow at 60, which is basically like half tempo. And I also am playing some rhythms now. So I'll play like a dotted rhythm, dum, dee, da, do, dee, and then I'll reverse that. So I'll show you some practicing on this. And I'm just sort of playing around with it a little bit, trying it at different tempos, different articulations. Once that, and I'm very aware of what my hands are doing. So that A sharp to F sharp and the F sharp to the C sharp, I'm trying to really focus in on those 2 movements with my left hand so that I make sure I really get all the coordination of them together. Something I didn't talk about a lot or at all really is embouchure. And so to make a short little lesson on embouchure, what I think about on the clarinet embouchure is to say the letter Q like that. And I tend to think of blowing my air a bit up towards my upper front top teeth, like that, straight up. And that enables me to have a really focused airstream. I also raise my tongue a fair amount as if I'm saying he. And if I couple the sound of he with a little bit more of a clarinet closed embouchure and the flatter chin, corners are somewhat firm, I get this he to turn into a different type of a sound like this. She, or shoo, shoo, sh. And again, I'm blowing my air in my mind kind of up against my front top teeth. So when I do that, now my embouchure is kind of set and relaxed, but somewhat firm. So once it's set, everything feels great. And then all of a sudden, when I change registers, all of a sudden everything feels different. And then we have to actually make an articulation in the note, and that changes everything as well. So number one, we have different ranges of the clarinet. The low E up to the throat B flat is called the Chalumeau range. The B up to the C is called the clarion range. And from a high C sharp and above is called the altissimo range. Each of those ranges feel differently inside our mouth, and the way we basically sort of approach forming the sound for each of those ranges, or I should say ranges, but also individual notes within those particular ranges. So what we want to do is, number one, get used to having a general idea of embouchure like this: Q, flat chin, corners firm. Let the clarinet rest on the lower lip, have some of the red lip being visible, not rolling too much in, top teeth gently resting. Some people do play double lip embouchure, and it's a fantastic way to play as well. You get a wonderful sound with that, and you also get a super hyper awareness of a lot of things, of your air in particular, when you're playing double lip. Double lip means having the top teeth and the bottom teeth both covered with your lips. But besides the general setup of the embouchure, now when I play these passages faster, I almost have to be a little bit looser with my embouchure and a little bit more flexible so that I can allow those large leaps and what I feel like is a different sense of resistance on the notes to come across. So if I kind of speed that passage up on bar 25, and I'm going to put beat 2 on now because I go to the C sharp and the second beat, and that changes the whole feeling inside of the resistance. as you play through this, I would say I would spend probably like a good 70 or 80% of your time on that second half, particularly on those bars. Let me go back and recap. I'm just sort of talking to you all as if I'm practicing now. So I didn't have a full script of what I wanted to do in this video today. I wanted to just kind of talk through it and see if anybody had any comments or any ideas. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I want to hear about them, and I will absolutely try to play something that you're having a question about. But let me try to play that second half of it. One of my C sharps didn't come out. So let me go back and review that. And again, as if I'm practicing, see what happened. With me, what happened is my left hand position, the angle of my left hand was not quite right. And I didn't get the full pad part of my finger to cover my thumb hole. And the note leaked. And therefore, my low C sharp, when I changed the large leap, didn't come out. So I'm going to try to focus in on that. And if it happens once or twice more, I'll slow it down. And I'll really focus on that hand position exactly. So every time you practice something, you're trying to analyze what happened. If it went well, great. Pat yourself on the shoulder and say that was great. And then know what you did so you can try to repeat that later. By the way, every time I come back to these etudes, and I've looked at these on and off for years as a teacher, but also as a player, just as a student myself, they are wonderful exercises to come back to and revisit how we play. Playing the clarinet, playing a musical instrument is not something that you sort of set on autopilot. You can learn to do something really well. For instance, you learn a particular solo, you learn a scale or something, and then it's up to us to actually come back and revisit that and make sure that it's really under our fingers and everything is working well. So a lot of times I have to rework a lot of these up to get these moving along. Let me see here. Do you have also the Mozart Stadler's? So Jan is asking me about Mozart Stadler low C, and I have a copy of that here, but I don't have a clarinet to play that on here. So I'll just, if you don't mind, Jan, I'll just continue to finish with this work here. I also want to get to number 23, which is our other all-state piece. This is for the Kentucky KMEA, Kentucky Music Educators Association All-State Contest. So I'm just going to try to adjust my left hand position one more time. And so what you're doing, what you're seeing here is me just practicing this a little bit over and over and over, making slight adjustments to the hand position. I'm also trying to now think about downbeats. So let's see if I can do that again. Okay, good. So part of the other issue here, not issue, but a challenge with this piece is as you get to know the piece a little bit more, you can start to play it faster and faster. And then if you do that, if it's more under your control, you'll need to look ahead a little bit. So let me try it again from the second half. I'll try to make it to the end without too many errors, hopefully. Let's see what we can do. Rhythm was a little uneven there. again, my C sharps are not coming out consistently, but we're just going to keep focusing in when we practice on this. Particularly with me, what's happening, I think, is number one, my left hand position is not always exactly in sync. And number two, probably I'm not using enough air to get those C sharps out because of the large leaps. So I would continue to practice that. I want to jump over to the second piece a little bit. So this is the same book, Rose 32, but we're going to look at number 23. And this one here, I'll pull up the exact bars, number 9. And this one here is bar number, let's see, number 23, just pulling this up on my, here we go, 9 through 24, and they want this at 112. So what this means here in this particular piece is they're wanting us to think of eighth notes. So if this is 112 on our metronome, like this, oops, and let me get my eighth notes off. So that's what they want an eighth note to be. So in the first bar, bar 12, we should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like this, I'll go slowly so you hear every click on my metronome. Let me go a little bit faster than that. So let's see here. Bar 9. So every single click is our eighth note, and every single click is, I guess, half of what we would normally think of when we're thinking 4/4. In the second bar, bar 10, not the second bar, but the second bar of what this excerpt is, from bar 9. So bar 10, again, those triplets, three notes per beat. So bar 10 is 1, 2, triplet, triplet, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next bar, bar 11, is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6 and 7 ta theta, 8 ta theta. So we have 4 for each beat. So if we go on this one, and a little bit more talk about hand position here. So when we play this little passage from high C, that B flat to A flat can be a tricky fingering. It might be easy to get another note in there by mistake, like an A natural. So what I try to do is keep my pinky and ring finger almost kind of locked in together. And I also tilt my left hand down ever so slightly so that I can grab my A flat key and make sure my G key, my finger rather, is over the G hole. So again, we'll come back here. Let me pull the tempo down a good deal. So let's say you'll go to 80. And so that would be about how we would do that. Let's go to bar 15, and then we'll kind of back up and go bounce around a little bit. Bar 15. So let's get a few things looked at there. Bar 15, you can take your tie away if you want when you're practicing, or give a little bit of a breath accent. So you can go on 15. Don't forget your E flats on the way down, because in this particular passage in bar 15, even though there are 3 flats, B flat, E flat, and A flat, in the key signature, this is changed to a different scale. This is a B flat scale in this particular measure. So let's see. When you had, the last note, we'll get to that in a second. The last B flat, I want to kind of talk about that for a second. Just about the rhythm in 15. So you're having to account for 8 eighth notes, because 4 quarter notes, the 4 on the top means how many beats in the bar, and the 4 on the bottom means what gets the beat. That's a quarter note. And in this case, though, we're going to pretend that it's actually an 8/8. So there's 8 eighth notes in the bar. And so those 32nd notes will just be like what you think of in 4/4 as 16th notes. Come over to bar 16, that last B flat. There are some things called resonance fingerings on the clarinet. So we have a B flat, B flat, A, G. Well, if we do that, we sometimes can get a little extra resonance and quality and better sound to the instrument, because essentially that B flat, it makes our clarinet just this long. The holes up here open, and then everything else here below is open. So our clarinet tube is kind of just very short at that point. And they're not optimal holes acoustically. They should be different holes for the register key and for the throat B flat. So the clarinet makers have just, compromised and just put one hole with one approximate diameter. And so what we'll do is try to put some other keys down. So I would suggest when you hold that last B flat out, possibly 3, 3, and the low C, F key. And sometimes, depending on your clarinet, you can put 3, 1, 2, 3, and the low F, C key. And so what you should do is experiment with ones that work for you, so that when you get to bar 16, and actually when we get from that C to that B flat, I'm leaving my whole right hand down. Now, if we go to bar 17, there's another fingering we can use for the A flat. So if this is an A flat here, how about if we put 3 and 1 and the A flat key? You hear the difference. Now, there'll be a difference in intonation. Let me say that this is officially the way you finger an A flat right here. But it's an E to an F, and all you do is this. And then an F to a G is this. So we don't often think about fingering options. We often form the embouchure, we take in the breath, we blow, and then all of a sudden you get a sound and you think, okay, that's great, I did it. But what we can do is we can know some other options for fingerings that give us better quality sound, or options for sound, or options for intonation, which, by the way, we should do more YouTube lives or more videos on intonation. There's a lot to talk about on intonation. So let's save that for a different time. Okay. So if I start on 17, and what I'm doing in bar 21 is really kind of leaving my whole right hand down almost the whole time. And if you want a breath after that E flat, that wouldn't be the worst place to take it. That's with no breath, and with a breath. And then if we put our, I didn't execute that correctly there at the end. Let's put our metronome back on, say at 112, so you can hear the whole tempo of this. That's another thing. So when I first played my G, I did that twice just now. The first G popped out. I didn't make any adjustment of my air, and I didn't pay attention to it, and it just kind of got away from me. The second time, I realized that there's a really big difference between this B flat, even with my resonance fingerings. So I kind of did a step gingerly a little bit, backed my air off just ever so slightly to make sure that G And so that would be a good example for us to practice, where we're practicing articulating a note, tonguing the G, but also not needing to tongue the G. We could play that interval very smoothly with no articulation at all. And if we put the tongue in, we're just going to brush very lightly, just to kind of give it a little bit more rhythmic security. Okay, so again, let me just repeat. On the bottom here, on the comments, I can't remember what you call this area on the bottom of YouTube, the description, there are a number of links, some practice exercises. There are videos. I made all-state videos, performances of these. And what I tried to do this year for you all is to try to actually just play through, particularly the fast piece, at a bunch of different tempos, so you could play through it, hopefully with me, at different tempos with the metronome a lot. So you're hearing all of that click. And then also on the second piece, just again, with some metronome and without the metronome, so you can hear what this all sounds like. Do you have any comments? Just let me hear if there are any comments in the comment area. And I want to just keep an eye on the time here because we're going to do a saxophone one right after this. So I guess one of the other things I didn't mention earlier is scales. So there's a lot to talk about, and this is not supposed to be some exact or not some comprehensive all-in-one lesson. I just wanted to kind of meet you all and just talk through the piece a little bit. And I might do more of these if you all have an interest. So please let me know in the comment area or send me a message on Facebook or on through this YouTube channel. Oh, and subscribe to the channel, please. Please get in there and subscribe. So I guess one of the things we can talk about is we talked a little bit about embouchure, articulation. In a very short nutshell, I could say articulation is really all about air, not so much about the tongue, although there are details about the tongue that we need to talk about. One of them is you're going to use, generally speaking, about the tip of the tongue. Some people's physiology is different, so we have to make adjustments depending on what the person, their construct is. But on the whole, the general approach I take to articulation is you take a breath in, you gently place the tip of your tongue on just under the tip of the reed, so it's closing the reed, very gentle pressure on the reed. You're blowing your air now, but nothing's coming out because you're holding the reed closed. Then you gently release the tongue, and now the sound starts, and then you gently put the tongue back. So the trick is, number one, air, a constancy of air. It doesn't have to be like a wind tunnel. Sometimes it'll be slowed down and sped up. But air is number one, very, very important. And two is the gentleness of the tongue, removing and putting back. I think it's a misnomer to call notes that are articulated attacked notes, because really, in a way, you're starting with your tongue on the reed, pulling it off and putting it back again. So the note starts really kind of when you actually pull it off. So I have some all-state video, a playlist down below that you can check out. And on one of those, I talk about sound production and the beginning of sound, and there's a whole bunch of exercises. So if you could go look at some of those things, that would be great. Let's see, my friend Jan is asking a question here. Scales, major, oh yes, and he's talking about all of the different types of scales. So thank you for keeping me on track. Let's get to scales and really quickly before we end this. So I would recommend, if you don't know this scale with 3 flats in major, it's called E flat major, that you play both octaves and learn it. Get a little water in there. And by the way, I'm sorry I forgot to say this. Again, it's not as, without having a student here to kind of get the interaction with back and forth, it's not as easy. It's a little newer for me teaching style wise. We have a high C. Here's a D. Here's an E flat. So the D is with 2, 3, the thumb and the register key. The D is like this with the E flat pinky, and then the E flat is there. So this particular scale, we should get used to this scale. And the same thing with the first piece as well. Anybody have any other questions? I want to say thank you so much for coming by, whoever is out there, and I look forward to meeting or hearing you. If any of you are coming to our WKU Honors Band in January, I look forward to hearing you play then and meeting you. please come and say hello. If any of you are looking to get any instruction on the clarinet at all, just shoot me a text message, an email, and I'll be happy to do as best as I can to answer your questions. I wish everybody the best on this year's KMEA All-State auditions, and I know it's been a tough year for everybody, but I see a lot of enthusiasm out there in Kentucky. A lot of students are practicing very, very hard, which is very inspiring. So you all keep it up. One more thing, I'm sorry, before I stop. Buy some good reeds. Buy a new box of reeds. That is probably the most important thing. Second, get your instrument repaired by a qualified repair technician who knows how to repair instruments, so your instrument is in good working order before you make your video for this year's contest. And also on my instrument, just so you know, I'm playing on a Selmer Privilege clarinet and also a D'Addario EV10 mouthpiece, the Evolution. They're fantastic. And on a Zach ligature made by a very wonderful Italian friend of mine, Alberto. And so this is my setup. And I also play on Gonzalez reeds, FOF, which are over there, boxes and boxes of them. So good reeds are very, very, very important. Okay, I wish everybody all the best. Okay, thank you.